Weekly Download, a podcast about interesting games, industry news.
Brought to you by Big Games Machine.
Oh, look, I didn't even realise you had your on brand as well with your hoodie. Was
Always.
that a conscious choice?
A Pokemon one specifically? No.
Yeah. Well, it's good timing though.
Yeah.
Because we're recording this on Thursday, but of course this will release on Friday. So I think before we do any of the intros, I just want to say happy birthday to Pokemon. 30 years, looking pretty good for 30, and we're both on brand with our Pokemon related things. So, but yeah, on that note, hello everybody, welcome back to the Weekly Download, brought to you by Big Games Machine. I'm Tom, if you're new here, and I'm once again joined by Alex, my esteemed co-host and sharer of many an opinion, good and bad.
Yes, sometimes differing, sometimes the same, but always opinioned.
Always opinioned. We're both going to need our opinions today because we've got we're breaking convention a little bit, not too much, but normally we like to touch on 3 of the big stories from the week. But this week, as Alex, you'll be aware, the news around Microsoft and Xbox is so big. I thought we'd do something a little bit different and focus solely on the big shakeup that has taken place at Xbox. So we're going to be talking about the departures of Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond. We're going to be looking at the newcomers to their positions and their potential plans. And yeah, we're just going to have a little chat about this story, which we're a little bit late to this now just because of how and when we record the episodes. But even a week on, there's still a lot of conversation about this because it's
absolutely
such huge news.
And I'm still trying to cram. I was trying to cram before this to get as much kind of information into my head as possible. But at the same time, obviously, I had to be doing other things. So it was a lot of podcasts. So I'm going to have to be very careful that I'm not like misremembering 2 bits of information together.
We'll see what we end up with.
So I'm going to try not to slander myself or libel myself.
No, we'll do our best. But I think this will be a really interesting episode. We'll break away for just a moment. And when we come back, we'll dive right into this big shakeup at Xbox. Okay, and we are back, and we are going to be starting. Well, we're not starting. We are, like I said, we're just talking about Xbox today. And if you
in
don't
phases,
know what's happened,
there are. It's separated into natural sections. It's not as one long conversation.
But yeah, there's a lovely structure in place that I'm sure we'll both just blow out of the window within 5 minutes. But we'll give it
instantly. Just don't leave me on my own to pronounce anybody's names, and we should be fine.
Well, I'm sure you'll be okay. For anyone who is, invested in the games industry and somehow doesn't know what's happened, I guess we'll give the context. So Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond are both leaving their roles at Xbox/Microsoft, I guess. Phil Spencer is going to be retiring after nearly a quarter of a century, nearly 25 years at Microsoft. I think a lot of people don't know it's been that long because he's been more in that public-facing role within around the last decade. But yeah, he's been there for a long time. Sarah Bond less so, but she's also resigning to pursue new career opportunities and professional opportunities. Both will remain as advisors through to the summer of 2026, I think, to just make sure that there's a stable transition. It would have been quite funny if they just both left on Friday and all of a sudden everyone comes back on Monday morning and it's like, oh, where's Phil? Oh, Phil's gone.
Yeah, that's I think some continuity there when you've got to be making the introductions, letting everybody is. Yeah, I think.
Imagine the handover. Sense. Imagine the handover you'd have to put together for that if it's just one week to the next.
Yeah, I don't know when to, because we're going to talk about who took over later as one of these separate flows. Before I even talk, I'm blowing the structure out of the water. There we go.
This is what I meant. We're a few minutes in and already it's all going wrong.
Yeah. But maybe we'll stick with Phil. We can talk about the handover after.
Yeah. We can start
Yeah.
with Phil and Sarah. I think, to me, probably a good starting point then based on that is having a look at, I guess, the Phil Spencer's legacy, since he took over that position as like we've said, the public face of the Xbox brand. And I think, again, it feels just, time's funny. It doesn't feel like a long time ago to me that we saw the launch of the Xbox One, which, for anyone who wasn't, who can't remember or wasn't invested in things at the time, I think everyone at the time thought with the Xbox One it was just a disaster. The reveal was,
The
I
reveal
think,
was
what
shocking.
people say is the worst reveal ever, maybe.
Well,
of a
we'll
console.
never know. We'll never know how much easier a ride they could have had they gone second. Because ultimately what ended up happening was that they revealed their kind of always online policy. If you want to play offline, we have a console for you. It's called the Xbox 360.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
The
have to have the
TV,
disc in.
I'm fairly sure someone, I read something
The
at the
Xbox
time
One,
where someone had,
one for everything.
Yeah, someone had gone through the presentation for the Xbox One and they mentioned TV more than they mentioned games.
Yeah, and I mean Quantum
was
Break. I mean,
wild.
I know, like, we're not talking about other things today, but like the Control universe, Remedy, Alan Wake, like Quantum Break was part of that, and that's still owned by Microsoft as kind of one of the things. And that was, you play the game and you watch the show, and and you make choices through there, and they had a whole TV division. But we'll never know. Like, that could have been interesting in direction. Maybe it was ahead of its time in terms of connectivity, because that was still a massive issue then. People were concerned, would be less so now that you get the kind of download speed. You had like the Crackdown game they had planned, that the destruction of the environments was all going to be in the cloud and all this kind of thing. And ultimately, what we don't know about that is, had they gone second after the PlayStation 4 reveal, PlayStation 4 would not have had the massive head start it did, because they came out of the gate with, and you can trade games, and they just had somebody like handing a disc over.
That was at E3, wasn't it? Yeah. Where they were on stage, again, to give context to people, because I'd forgot that, Alex. One of the things that they did, what Sony did at E3 2013, 2014,
the following day,
all these reveals were going on. Yeah, they had like they were like, oh, this is how you share games.
Earlier than that, 2012 or something, wasn't it? Yeah.
4. And they just handed a Blu-ray from like one executive to the other, and it was that kind of felt like one of those moments where it was like, that's Xbox One has got a foot in the grave. But if we bring this back to Phil Spencer, I think he
inherited this mess.
Phil Spencer, yeah, he inherited that, and to give him the credit, I think he does deserve. Even if we look, as we'll talk about the position Xbox is in now, I think we give Phil Spencer a lot of credit for managing to rebuild from that position and bring Xbox back to a place where at least it wasn't not to be too harsh, but I think a laughing stock to some degree. I think people were, that launch had gone so badly that Phil Spencer really had a tough job of reasserting to people the value of Xbox, the value of playing on Xbox, and the value of that brand.
And the massive strength he had of being truly authentic. And, he almost got into trouble sometimes because he'd come out in kind of a shirt that represented something he was passionate about within the history of gaming. And everyone would assume that meant, that's going to be the next remake. That's going to be the next reboot. That's going to be whatever. It's like, no, he just liked the shirt. He was a gamer.
To me, I think one of the things I'd really give Phil Spencer credit for is that I think that, I mean, I'm someone who's very much, I'm like the Nintendo fan in the room, and I think that Nintendo historically in the past had these figures, the likes of Reggie, who were larger than life and who people really bought into.
Literally, in his
case.
And
I think that Phil Spencer was that kind of person where people, like you said, Alex, he wore his heart on his sleeve. He was very passionate about the things that he cared about. He was always willing to talk about what he was playing, what he loved. I think he was very public about his Xbox profile. You could go and find it, and he was he was getting achievements, he was finishing games, he was a gamer, and arguably that could have been to his detriment at times. But I think it was in the moment, in that period of time, it was what Xbox did need, and he did such a great job at being personable and making that brand
Authentic.
a brand that people wanted to engage with.
We hear authentic so often in marketing and PR, but I think, it really helps when the people at the top are walking the walk. And I think he did. And he also obviously, had the company line and was very slick at producing that and gamifying bad news at times. Not gamifying the news, but making it relatable to gamers. Yeah.
And I think we can see that if we look at some of the things that he championed. Game Pass was, not to say that he invented Game Pass. And I think when we talk about these things, it's not to say that he's the sole reason for any of these things. Game Pass was something that during his tenure has come on tremendously. We've saw, Game Pass has become synonymous with the Xbox brand. I don't think you can mention Xbox in a sentence now without, to me, instantly thinking of Game Pass. I think that's become such a major thing. I think
for better or worse.
Yeah, for better or worse, and we can discuss that because this is one of the things we touched on before we started recording. But I think cloud gaming was something, again, maybe a bit too early. And then the other really big part of his legacy, aside from the acquisitions, which we can touch on too, but I think more recently we've seen the Play Anywhere campaign, this idea that anything can be an Xbox. The Xbox has gone from being hardware in itself to something more synonymous with any device. And when we come on to the new guard at Xbox, this is something that we will return to because they might potentially go in a different direction. But I think we can look at a few of those things, and for good or for bad, as you said, Alex, you cannot argue that he will leave a legacy on Xbox that will be quite hard for anyone to match, which
absolutely,
I'm sure he'll be happy to have played a part in some of these things.
Absolutely. And with his time there, he left a huge mark. And I think one of the interesting things is that him and Sarah have left at the same time. Sarah Bond, I should say. It sounds very familiar calling her Sarah then. I had to check myself. Sarah
First name
Bond.
terms.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to wonder what happened there. I mean, I think when you were putting this together, you described her as the heir apparent. I think it marks something about it. At the very least, it marks an idea that they're moving away from continuity, that they're definitely like shaking up the Etch-a-Sketch board and
like
starting again.
A very clean break, I think. And maybe we will know in the future. We don't know at this point, but all we can look at is reports that we read and other such things. But I do think that the fact that she's leaving is a case of, as you've said, Phil Spencer's going. If she's not stepping into that role, why would she want to stay on Xbox? And I think that's very valid. And I think it makes sense for her. I think it makes sense for Xbox. But I do think the pair of them leaving together, as you've said, does indicate that this is Microsoft saying we need to go in a new direction. We want to go in a new direction. We don't want to carry on what we've been doing because we don't think it's working.
No, exactly, and absolutely. And you have to imagine, like, if they kept Sarah Bond there, they'd be assuming a continuation at the very least, like at least the direction things were moving in, like hold the course. We're moving Phil out with this, and it's purely because he does want to move on and stuff. It's like, no, I think it does indicate a little bit more. I don't know if we look at, were they pushed, or is it a retirement, or is it a like, we're changing this?
Well, we
what does that look like? Sorry,
yeah,
exactly.
I think from the outside, it does seem to be a case that whoever, someone's pushed someone, however this has come about, it feels it's a clean breakup. It's a decision with everyone to look at the past few years and say, okay, we're not happy with the direction things are going. I'd look at the the acquisitions of ZeniMax, which is
It's hard not to look
Bethesda
at them.
and
Yeah.
Activision Blizzard, and that was, even just a lot of money. That was a lot of money within the world of video games, and there's big numbers thrown around in this industry all the time. And that
Yeah.
was something that was done under, the direction of this previous leadership. And again, from the outside, I don't know if it's worked. I don't, I think it's hard to say as a business decision, has it played out so far? It feels like to me it hasn't. And
It depends how quickly they intend to recoup the money, right? I mean, bringing on those studios of that size is a massive one, the outgoing, to the ongoing outlay of having all those additional staff, all the additional studios, the public facing look when you have to cut some of those studios, because of course, jobs are kind of overlapping. It was a massive thing to take on. But like you say, how long do they have to recoup that investment? That's the real question on their side.
yeah.
I'm sure they have projections. They might even be in some earnings report from some point in the past. But are they on track for that? How much of a pivot do they need to make to regain that ground?
I think we've already seen, and I can't remember the exact number at this moment, so don't quote me on this, but I believe that from Black Ops 7, which is the latest Call of Duty game, from that going on to Game Pass day one, there is an estimated $300 million in revenue that's being lost from that alone, which
estimated. It's also one of the worst. It's also one of the few CODs that got as badly reviewed and hasn't been in the charts in certain areas, which could be in part, as is rightly pointed out, from the fact that it is on Games Pass.
Soon, and this is something that we did touch on before we started, and I'm keen to move on because I think we're going to go on to something even more interesting. But the decision for acquiring these studios is great because they make great games, but as soon as you turn around and say that every game that these studios make is going to be accessible day one on a subscription service, the point that you've made about how long are you waiting to recoup the money you've invested, it gets a lot harder when, rather than people spending $70 on Call of Duty, on Indiana Jones, on Doom, Oblivion remastered, to look at these games in the last year, they're not spending $300 on those 4 games. They're paying a much smaller amount to access them.
But if you only buy 6 AAA games a year, or 6 games a year, which I'd argue a lot of people do, then like a lot of people just buy FIFA, they just buy COD, or all those kind of big ones. The issue is they put the price of Game Pass up so much that at some point it feels like they're trying to get that money via that same money via subscription. It's not a saving to people, and and equally, we touched on this, like the idea of the Spotification of gaming was what Game Pass kind of was hoping to do, but it doesn't quite sit in that place. Gamers want ownership, and it doesn't offer the full catalog. It offers, like you say, this kind of access to the select, and some of them very big games. But it's a confusing proposition, I think, is the bottom line of that.
It is confusing. It is confusing, but then we'll leave the confusion. I think we can wrap this by saying that I think Sarah Bond has been less public in her role, but I think we've seen the impact that she's had. I think it's undeniable the impact that Phil Spencer's had, but they're the past. Now, if we move to the future of Xbox, and there's 2 big names that we're seeing come up, and the first of those is Asha Sharma, who will be the new CEO. Formerly, she was the president of Microsoft's Core AI. So this is the appointment that I think is inevitably, I've mentioned the 2 letters, this is the appointment that inevitably is making people perk up a bit and be like, hang on, what's going on here?
Certainly pay attention. Yeah.
The other, which we're kind of viewing as the continuity, the in-house promotion is Matt Booty, who is the new chief content officer. He's been promoted from head of Xbox Studios, so that's very much the gaming DNA to accompany the perhaps more tech-minded approach that Asher Sharma has had. I think immediately, like I've said, we see someone who's the president or the head of AI division at Microsoft. The immediate question is, okay, does that mean the former CEO Phil Spencer's gone, who's someone who's this very like, I love games and the games man, and he's being replaced by someone whose background is in AI and AI technology?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard when you're incredibly passionate about something, because we are about games, to see somebody come in, but that doesn't have that background, because you imagine that like having that background is going to help, but ultimately, the background in games hasn't got them where they wanted to go. They're on a course that they've made these purchases, they own these IP, they have all these things. Maybe they need some fresh thinking on how to repackage, bundle that, put it out, reutilize it, and bringing in somebody with a tech background. I don't know. Until this happened, Asher Sharma would not have appeared on my radar. I don't think I knew her name at all. So when we say she comes from an AI background, like, is it tech? Is it just like, is it technology driven? Is she AI? Isn't she an AI devotee and passionate about it in that sense? Or is it, she was massive.
Well,
that's what she fell into, and she became passionate through doing. And that could be gaming for her too.
What's interesting with you raising that point is that one of the things which the pair of them have immediately stated and been very explicit about it is that there's no, this is only public. This is what they're saying publicly. It's all we can go off. But there's no pressure from corporate Microsoft to be filling the process with AI. It's not a case of we're bringing in someone who's got a background in AI and their sole job is to we can get rid of everyone at Bethesda, guys. It's fine because AI is going to do the work. It seems the direct quote from Sharma on this is, "I will not flood our ecosystem with soulless AI slop."
As I grumble in the background. Don't make me defend AI. Please don't put me on this side of this discussion. Firstly, that's a great sentiment. What does flood mean? What does slop mean? Where are we taking those measures from? Like, be like, I don't believe this is slop, and therefore flood. It's an easy statement to make, and you can backtrack it or qualify it at another point. There's a reason we're not put in charge of major corporations, Tom. It's because we're resistant to AI, and you need somebody that's open.
Because I got the email from Microsoft on Thursday. They were like, hey, we've
noticed some troubling trends about how interested you are in Nintendo. If you weren't into that, you could perhaps be up for this. But having a deep understanding of AI and seeing the opportunities there, while also having a practical or a restrained head on your shoulders about understanding where the limitations may be with that, also could actually be really advantageous with the way the industry is going. However much we want to kind of litigate that, the reality is AI is going to be part of it, and maybe that means it makes a lot of sense for her to be in the role.
You're 100% right. This could be a great opportunity for Xbox, because they could end up in a position where, because of this new leadership that has that inherent knowledge from the tech side of how this technology works, they could get a massive head start where they can use these tools. I mean, what we've had mentioned is that AI will be a production tool, so we're looking at bug testing, we're looking at supporting with code. So it's not that replacement for humans necessarily, but it's almost like playing one of the old GTA games and having a cheat code. If you've got an opportunity to make yourself invincible, or spawn in 6 stars and all of a sudden everything looks great, this could be a great opportunity, because they can bring in someone who isn't like you've said, Alex, it's not someone who might be a hardcore gamer, whatever that means nowadays. It's not someone who she might, Sharma might not be there talking about how much she loves Banjo Kazooie nuts and bolts, but is that effective? Is that an effective way to run a business? It might not be. She could be the level head that Xbox needs at this moment to put
Yeah.
themselves back in a position where they can be competing with with Nintendo, with PlayStation, and with other publishers. It's not about
Yes.
hardware, it's about the publishing as well. And she could be the perfect choice. And I think that having Matt Booty alongside her as that more games focused figure, that could be an amazing combination that really works for Xbox and for Microsoft, who, obviously as the parent company, they are making the decisions ultimately. So
Yeah.
they will be happy now with this team that they've put together.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like it's just got to be, assuming she surrounds herself with incredibly good people, which, given the talent around her, I'm sure is a thing, not knowing which games are the best. Other people can tell you that really easily. Ultimately, there are times it's really helpful to be a gamer in the business, but I'm not sure being the head of a company of that scale is one of them.
Well, I don't think either of us have the knowledge of like you said, I can't run Xbox. But I think what I do know and what I think is right is that what I see it a lot with Nintendo, where people are quite critical of Nintendo now because they look back with rose tinted glasses and go, I miss Reggie, I miss Iwata, I miss this more friendly, down with the gamers company. Whereas we have to be realistic. I imagine Nintendo's shareholders are delighted with the direction Nintendo's gone in. And they've gone in a direction where their leadership, it's still people from within Nintendo, but it's people who aren't as in your face about the fact that, I'm a gamer first, and I'm a businessman or businesswoman, I'm a business person second. And
didn't Reggie come
and
from Pizza Hut or something? Am I dreaming?
He did.
Yeah.
I've actually, it's somewhere down here with my new shelf that I've got, but I'd recommend, on a side note, Reggie's book is really good, and there's a very good section about him working at Pizza Hut. But yeah, I think the point being that what fans want and what makes more sense from a business perspective are widely different things. I'm sure people in a year will look back and be like, Phil Spencer was great, wasn't he? But the facts are that if in a year's time Xbox is in a much better business position than they are now, it's the right decision. It doesn't, what a CEO of a company doesn't really matter in terms of what they do publicly, if behind the scenes they're doing a great job.
For the company, it's money go up. For everyone else, it's like, is there a good game? Are these year's games better than last year games? And if they are, I think the rest is good. The pomp and circumstance of events and standing up and wearing the t-shirt's one thing, but if the games are good, that speaks far more than anything else. So I think that's going to be where we start to see all that come together.
No, 100%. I think it is such a big shake up to go from. I mean, we don't. Like you've made the point, Alex, we don't really know a lot about. I think Matt Booty is someone that people will be more familiar with because of the fact he's already been within Xbox. We don't know a lot. We're not as familiar with Asha Sharma, but I think being put in charge of Xbox, clearly got a great brain. I think we'll be making the right decisions. I think, to me, maybe it's getting a little bit nerdy here, but this is really exciting to me because I think what I want is, I don't want Xbox to surrender and disappear. I think it's really important that a great brand, Xbox has been a part of games for, we're looking 25 years now. It's been a long time. And I think a strong
It is,
Xbox,
isn't it?
yeah, it's a long time. I think I think the original Xbox is
2001, 2002. I was working in a game station and selling it. I can't remember if I was there the year it launched or the year after.
There you go. That puts a date on things.
Yeah.
But we want a strong Xbox because we want. My worry is if we lose Xbox, then you have PlayStation competing with PC at the high end, and then it's just Nintendo, and you only have PlayStation and Nintendo in the console space. And I don't want that. I've never owned an Xbox, but the last thing I want is for Xbox to become an irrelevant brand. So I'm excited to see where Xbox goes. And maybe that is a bit, why do I care so much? Why am I getting excited about this? But you don't, as we were talking about before the episode, you've got a new Resident Evil coming out. I've got a new Zelda.
Oh, yes.
I want a new Zelda. You don't often get such big changes at the biggest companies in the industry. And this is a radical direction that Xbox is going in. And, I'm really excited to see it play out. And who knows, if under Sharma's leadership, a new Elder Scrolls comes out, that would be an achievement in itself, because it's been about 50 years since the last one got announced. So, who knows?
I'm going to pick up the ball and a segue for us. And I like shouting it out as a thing. Obviously, you're quite keen to see Xbox continue, but Seamus Blackley, not quite so confident in that being the case, because he feels that Xbox is being sunsetted as part of this change, and it's being like pushed gently into the night, is the quote, as Microsoft focuses more on its core AI business.
Yeah, which for context, I didn't know until I was researching this episode, but Seamus Blackley is the co-creator of Xbox. So when we were talking about all those years ago, in the old year of 2002, and the millennium was young, and the polygons were still visible when you played a game. Blackley was there at the start, and I think this feels very sensationalist. It's someone who's clearly this was his baby at one point, so it's someone who's very passionate about the brand. So it's a very strong take. To me, I think even though the Xbox brand is weaker than it was, I still think there's a strength to the Xbox brand within games that I think it's silly to, not that I think Microsoft is doing this, but I think it would be a silly decision to lose that branding, because I don't think, to me, I think if you have PlayStation, Nintendo, and then Xbox in the middle, no one calls PlayStation and Sony are the same thing, but I don't think Sony would have the same weight as PlayStation does, and that feels similar to me. So I can't see. Yeah, I don't think Xbox might change what it is, but I don't think Xbox is going anywhere. That would be a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, there's a massive question hanging generally over like when's the last console generation as a concept. Like it's always kind of, what do consoles continue to look like? Forgetting even the memory crisis, hardware crisis going on at the moment. But I understand where the sentiment's coming from Seamus on this, just because Microsoft isn't a hardware thing. Like they're software. That's kind of their primary thing. So when you look at what they could lean into what they do best, forget their overheating, whatever consoles over here, and focus on what they do, their absolute best. Where I think that damages them, if that is the direction they go in, is that it does take it out of the home. It does take it out of young people's minds from the beginning, and they don't interact with the brand until they're in a way that they see and acknowledge until they're adults. And, sure, when you start up Windows, it says Microsoft. How often is it not just straight from sleep mode? People just lose that
as connection. We record this podcast on Apple hardware as well. That's a really good point, actually, and it's not something that I thought of, but it is a very that is very true. You want to as part of the wider crisis, I think the industry is having. Not crisis necessarily, but we are seeing such a huge shift from young people, from kids engaging with, Nintendo, with PlayStation, with Xbox. we're seeing this explosion in Roblox, in user generated content. So the importance of, you look at Nintendo as a great example, the importance of being that name that people associate with games and making that happen as young as possible feels like a good enough reason to keep the Xbox name going and to keep the brand and to keep whatever form their new hardware will take, to keep that hardware. Because
Yeah,
if you lose that, you can't, I don't think you can, and we can't predict the future. I don't think you can skip a generation and all of a sudden Xbox can come back in 10 years' time and all the
no,
kids are going to be playing
no,
Xbox.
it's
If you go and you don't come
you
back.
gone. Absolutely. And I think, there's an element there, like Sega obviously reinventing themselves as a publisher and elements along there. But ultimately, you lose. People are less familiar. They're more familiar with the brands at the end of that process, like the games they're playing. Whereas when you've got the physical thing in the home, it's something that, and
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting, it's worth it as a loss leader. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't have to turn the massive profit that AI potentially could. It just has to be making enough money to continue to win hearts and minds and be pointed at as, you look at it in other ways. Like there was that moment, like everybody was like, why are they making Pentiment? Why are they making a Hi-Fi Rush? Why are all these things happening when they're smaller? And it couldn't happen any other way. Granted, they're kind of being pushed to the side now because profit is important there to them. And, maybe the Game Pass isn't performing as well as they thought. But that kind of heart and minds element, like how far away can they step from that as this process continues?
That is the question, isn't it? Is what, it'll be interesting to see what the strategy becomes. I mean, one of the other points that we've seen Sharma make is that one of the big things which Phil Spencer did, led Xbox during the time of, was pushing games from being exclusive into popping up on all hardware. And I think even a few years ago that was an inconceivable idea, whereas now you've got Fallout launching on the Switch this week. It's Xbox is in a place where they are pushing their games that would be exclusive previously to all hardware. Presumably that will continue. It feels like something where that decision won't change. I think it would be hard to all of a sudden say, can you remember like 2 years ago where we released a load of our games on other systems, then we stopped doing that? I can't see that happening, but we don't know. Maybe it will. You've raised the question about games like Hi-Fi Rush, like Pentiment. Are we going to see this new Xbox continue to experiment with these games? Are we going to see them continue to fund? I say continue as if half these studios
I was like,
shut down and laid
that's
off.
what I'm
It feels
saying.
like that decision's already been made. If we've got someone running this company now who is not, Phil Spencer was business minded, but
there've been a number of accounts. My understanding is that the transition's been kind of in the works for a few months, is kind of my understanding. Ash Farmer and Phil Spencer were kind of like, the handover was happening. And I do wonder if as part of that, it's like, okay, Phil, you're going to make the hard decision so I don't come in and look like an absolute, whatever words you want to pick on that. Because, I wonder if those decisions, those hard cuts were being made kind of in conjunction, looking at balance sheets and all sorts of other things. And I was listening to a podcast, the Jeff Gerstmann show earlier, might as well shout it out. And one of the points made on there was sometimes it's just easier to shutter a whole studio because then you're saving on building costs. There's all these other things that kind of like all these other parts of that equation that free up significantly more over here if you do just like a full kind of, I was going to say amputation, but you know what I mean? Like, lop it all off.
On the topic of doing just that, I have to say this has just been about Xbox today, but the decision by Sony to shut Blue Point Games is one that I'm not very happy about. So I need to get that on the record because I think we could do an entire 10-hour discussion about some of Sony's decisions, but I think we could link that back here and say Sony is faltering a bit. And, I do think Xbox has an opportunity, maybe not hardware wise, but I think people are underestimating a little bit how strong Sony and PlayStation's position is. So this could have been something where, like you said, if this has been in the works for a while, Xbox might be looking, Microsoft might be looking and thinking, there might be an opportunity for us here. If we make these decisions now and we try and get in whilst while the iron is hot and get in and strike it, PlayStation isn't in this unassailable position for the next generation. They might have won the last two, but there's vulnerability there, and could we, can we take advantage of that? Nintendo were just like chilling on Al Delfino, like no one cares about Nintendo when it comes to like the
competition.
Yeah. Everyone's just like, oh yeah, Nintendo's fine. They're just chilling in the back, like watching something on their iPad.
Nintendo's going to do what Nintendo's going to do, and we're seeing it at the moment. Like a lot of the stuff coming out on the Switch 2 is swinging hard at what can be done on consoles. Hearing good things about Requiem, for example, as we go completely off the reservation in terms of Microsoft stuff. But what inevitably happens is like 2 years in, it just gets outdated. So ultimately, while it's fun for a little while, as kind of a crossover, whatever's next, or even the PlayStation Pro and the higher end Series X's, it's not going to keep up. So that just drops off. They're always a half step behind, and that half step is becoming increasingly significant as the console generations extend out. But yeah, it's an interesting point.
We're seeing loads of reports that we're not going to get any new console hardware until the end of the decade.
Absolutely. Well, that's part of the point.
I think we'll wrap there, because ironically you've brought up in that last minute the two stories we're going to look at for the rundown this week. So we'll cut here. We'll be back in a second, and then we'll take a quick look at a few stories, that one of which I know that I saw it earlier in the week and I thought, oh, Alex is going to love this. So I saved it for Alex, and we'll be right back and we'll take a look at these little stories. And we are back with this week's Rapid Rundown. As I said just before that little break, Alex, you were, whether you did it on purpose or not, you had the foresight to look ahead at what might be coming in the Rapid Rundown and lead everyone into it. So
different points. They were different points.
Yeah, different points, but we're touching on the same games. Of course, it is. It's not just Pokemon's birthday tomorrow. We've also got the release of Resident Evil Requiem. And Alex is very excited for this, aren't you, Alex?
Yeah,
but
I've
luckily
taken next week off.
You have. He's going to be in pure Resident Evil mode.
There will be somebody else here next week.
You didn't leak any of it, because if you had, Hideki Kamiya, who I think everyone knows has the biggest block list in the history of Twitter. That may not be true, but it certainly seems like
it's certainly up there.
Earlier in the week. Well, I did, but it's okay. Earlier in the week, he said that he wishes, and I did double check on this because obviously it's in Japanese and being translated across, but I'm very confident this is what was said. He said that anyone who has leaked Resident Evil Requiem, not only has he cursed them to never be able to play a video game again, but he's also wished them 1,000 deaths, which is a strong take. I won't condone it, but this is we know that Kamiya is a very passionate man, and very passionate. His not rants, but his blocks and like wars with people on Twitter over Street Fighter and the other games he's involved with are fantastic. But I mean, specifically, I think it's really. I think it's a problem now that, it's really hard to know what you're getting into, especially with something like TikTok. And it's just, I haven't seen any leaks. You don't know what you're about to get fed as you're kind of like scrolling up on shorts or whatever else. And like suddenly it's like, oh, a spoiler for a game that I have been looking forward to. I haven't really watched trailers. I haven't, I did make a point of playing the demo at Gamescom. But otherwise, I've basically avoided Resident Evil 9 with the excitement of going in like, fresh tomorrow evening. So I kind of see where he's coming from. Perhaps.
Yeah.
No,
hopefully it would be fine. Like, I think if you are like doing long form articles, and you want to discuss the game, if you want to do it in your reviews and you want to like, but you know, you leave with like, I am going to discuss, and like long form videos that I watch a lot of. But like almost any kind of content is going to spoil it.
Spoiler tags, spoiler alerts, they're there for a reason. Use them. You know, I think especially when we're in the first few weeks. I mean, the game's not even come out yet.
No, exactly.
You can't be spoiling stuff for people.
I watched because of the other things. I was watching the showcase at Gamescom, and I would have done without seeing that trailer, if I'm honest. The only reason I went to play the demo is because I wanted the goodie bag they give you at the end. It wasn't even to play the game. I really just wanted to go into this completely kind of as blind. I've done an okay job staying blind on it. But yeah, if I was scrolling and scrolled up, and I suppose I have had something spoiled. It's like the inclusion, and I'm going to do my best to avoid it. If somebody might be the inclusion of the old school character in it as a playable character, I would have been happy to have as a surprise as well. So, you know, although the Resident Evil mobile game spoiled that for me without trying. So, you know, maybe they need to curse themselves.
Maybe we'll get Hideki on the case. He'll have a word.
I wonder if you looked at all of our podcasts. No, if you looked at all of our podcasts, I reckon Resident Evil gets and video game movies get an inordinate amount of play thanks to me, and I do apologize for that. Anybody that comes in not looking for their Resident Evil minute.
I think you're perfectly. I love anytime I see anything Resident Evil, I'm always like, I saw the reviews for Requiem last night. For context, I can't play these games because they scare me too much, but I saw the reviews last night and I just thought I'll message Alex in the morning and pass on my goodwill, my happiness for you that the reviews look great.
And I am okay with that being spoilt.
Yeah. It's a good game. Oh, damn spoilers. I
wanted to find out myself.
But something else that I think is good, as well as those reviews, is that what a segue. Is that apparently, according to Jeff Grubb, Sony has been doing some experimenting with the Switch 2, and they've got Gran Turismo 7 running on it. Now, it's out of shot, but I have my little foldable racing seat. I do love Gran Turismo. The PSVR 2 has been abandoned by Sony, but if there's any reason to get it, it's for Gran Turismo. It's a brilliant game, but it's very intense. It's very demanding, and it really surprises me that, by all accounts, they've got it running on the Switch 2. I think this is interesting mainly because, to me, it says that Sony is figuring out what it can run, what they can get on the Switch 2, which to me points to more. We've already seen the Lego Horizon game come out on the Switch 2 that Sony published, but they've been a lot less bullish than Microsoft and Xbox in terms of releasing games on Nintendo's hardware. But I think, if this is what they're doing internally, is that a sign that there is going to be more Sony games coming to the Switch 2, which absolutely I'm all for.
I am reminding myself here that Gran Turismo 7 is not only 4 years old at this point, but also is PS4 compatible. So I do wonder which version of the game, or kind of what level of that they've got running between the two. Because if it's the PS4 version, I don't think that's going to be much of a shock. The fact that they've gone out and done it, like you say, in terms of indicating where things are going, it's interesting at the end of that. I haven't read the article. I've only seen your kind of comments. It's interesting that his kind of takeaways, like,
don't worry,
exactly,
I've got everything you need in my knowledge.
Don't expect to see it come to the Switch. I'm like, why on earth not? I do know a reason why not. I wonder if the licensing would be an absolute nightmare and would require them to go out and
there's a lot of music tracks in that game.
Yeah, and the cars.
And the cars, yeah.
Yeah, I like that game is probably a licensing nightmare. So that would be a reason that we may not see it. So I take it back, but I don't think it would be about Sony wanting to hold on to Gran Turismo. And this is going back to the idea Nintendo's the one that's forgotten about in this. Like, people aren't worried about putting things out on Nintendo because they don't view it as direct competition. I think the reason for it not coming out is probably more likely down to the licensing agreements they've got than it would be their reticence to put out their first party games on a Switch.
Yeah, I fully expect that we will see more Sony games. I think it makes sense. I know that I appreciate that we want to wrap up, but I recognize the fact that, by all accounts, Sony are working on their own handheld, but it's the point we make time and time again. Nintendo at this point, and they have done for generations now, they exist in their own place. They're not competing with PlayStation, with PC, with Xbox. They're not. Their only competition is people online who are like, what do you mean it doesn't run as well on the Switch 2 compared to my PS5 Pro? But everyone else, I think all the manufacturers and the publishers and stuff, they just look and think, hey, that's an audience of people who there's a good chance they haven't played our game, like with Fallout. There's a good chance they haven't played Fallout because they might only have Nintendo hardware. So here you go, we'll make a boatload of money from this. And I think Sony would be in the same way Xbox have. Sony would, it makes total sense for them to figure out what they can get on the system. And if they can make something run well enough, then why not release it? We've seen, I know we've seen a lot of older games coming to the Switch 2. I know you made the point that you look at Requiem, and by all accounts, obviously it's going to look worse, but by all accounts, runs a lot. All the stuff I've read with Requiem on the Switch 2 is saying that it targets 60, it hits it quite a lot of the time. It dips to, it's dipping from 50 to 60 sometimes, but it's a great sign to me that you're getting day and date new games coming out on the hardware. And I think if other companies are experimenting with it, with these more demanding games, then it must be something where everyone's looking and being like, oh, it's interesting. Maybe it's more powerful than we gave it credit for. And, DLSS and a lot of the upscaling technology helps as well.
Helldivers is out on Xbox now. Like I think, those decisions are made
Helldivers would
when
make
the time is right
a lot
across
of
everything.
sense.
Yeah. It's just like, there's putting first party games are more of a suggestion now than more of a guideline, as
unless you're
Barbosa would
Nintendo,
say.
and it's like if Nintendo would rather like liquidate the entire country, the entire company, than let Mario step onto another system, which I don't have an issue with that. But it's very much like everyone's like, oh, when are we going to get Mario Kart World on Steam? And I'm like, over Nintendo's dead body. Do you know how protective they are of their IP? I remember reading, and I'll wrap up after, but I remember reading that Nintendo were very keen. There was at one point with Fortnite, Metroid was a consideration for a skin, a Samus even.
That'd be good.
And Nintendo were
look,
far
it's the
along
Metroid,
in the process.
Mum.
It's the Metroid woman. But ultimately, the reason that didn't happen was because Nintendo had a very hard line, which was, we're happy to have it on the Switch, but there is no way on earth that we will ever let Samus appear on other systems. It's not happening.
Yeah.
So I think Nintendo will be like, hey, if so if PlayStation are like, oh, can we have a Switch 2 dev kit? Nintendo are like, yeah, have 10, but you ain't getting Mario. So
this is a one-way street.
Do what you want. Yeah.
Incoming only.
You bring everyone over. Hey, you want to bring Nathan Drake over? Go for it. Can we have Zelda back? No, you cannot. We'll chuck you Chibi Robo.
I was going through my Rolodex, like Doshin the Giant. You can have Doshin the Giant.
Trying to think of who you could go back.
Yeah,
now.
it was like
Star Fox. We don't care about
characters.
Star Fox.
Yeah, Star Fox.
Star Fox.
You can have Star Wolf. You're
what's
not
the
getting Star
frog
Fox.
called?
Slippy.
Slippy. Yeah, have Slippy. Take Slippy. We don't care. But no, fantastic. We'll wrap there. I think this has been a bit of a bumper episode, but nice to have a good conversation about Xbox. If you're, if you've listened and you've enjoyed, be sure to subscribe. As we mentioned at the start, this episode's been a bit more unusual. We tend to cover a few more stories, but today we just wanted to talk about Xbox. But if you are looking for more stories to accompany the podcast, we also have the weekly download newsletter, which is available via LinkedIn. And if you're thinking, I want even more stories, then good news, because we also have the daily download, which is a daily newsletter Monday to Friday, which you can get to your inbox. We cover the biggest stories every day from the industry, big stories, small stories. We also have an events list in there as well, so you can see what events are coming up. And yeah, it's a great way I tend to write that, so I can guarantee the quality. But that's everything. The link for that will be in the description. And, before I finish, I just want to say, Alex, thank you for joining me today. I'm happy that we managed to get a lot of Resident Evil mentions in there for you today, despite the
it was good.
Xbox
I'm G'd up for next
focus.
week. Maybe I'll record a quick comment during the podcast to give my thoughts on the game.
Oh yeah,
That'll be fun
please
for you.
do, please do. We will miss you, but if we can get a Resident Evil mention, I'm sure we can add it in. But thank you to Alex. Thank you to everyone for listening or watching, however you're consuming this episode. And yeah, we'll see you next time. We'll see you next week, and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for listening.